Hello and welcome to Cannabis Marketing Live, all puff, no fluff. Today we're going to be talking about how you can build trust into your cannabis product. It's something that many consumers are asking for, and as an industry, we need to be paying attention. And to help us talk about this topic with all of her experience and insights is the fabulous Merril Gilbert of TraceTrust. Welcome, Merril.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me. And, it is my favorite topic. How do we have safe products that everyone can enjoy?
Absolutely. And it's so important because we've all heard the horror stories of what can happen when you're not careful about the products and what you can do. And we've heard about the horror stories in our industry about the problems and challenges of scaling with quality and maintaining that quality. So I'm really excited that you're here to talk about these really important topics with us today. To kick us off so everyone can know that you are truly the expert that you are, can you tell us how a little bit about TraceTrust and how you came about co-founding that?
Yeah, so we founded the company at the end of 2015. It became TraceTrust in 2016. And my co-founder, partner in crime is Rihanna Wu. And we both come from the food and beverage industry. And I come from a heavy background in operations and sustainability, and the last 10 years very focused on the future of food and technology and overall ecosystem. Rhiannon comes from the agriculture, science, and auditing and compliance side. And so with that, we joined forces and really were going to make beautiful products, and then realized that our expertise was much more needed in the expansion of these legal markets. So being able to develop real systems that are the acceptance in every other industry for compliance and audit and validity. So we created a true dose for cannabis and HGMP for hemp-derived products, and this is very much in the same lines as certified organic or non-GMO process or a B Corp. And we work very closely in establishing a standard that is right now before ASTM, which is the International Standard Certification Program for the guidance. So ahead of FDA, ahead of everything. And what this does is it validates all sources of ingredients, not just the cannabis or hemp, the entire life cycle. It validates good manufacturing processes. And more importantly, we really look at what is that label? What is it telling you? How easy is it for you to understand when you open that package? And then having that homogeneity tested in a third-party laboratory scenario. So that is what we do. And we like to say that we make edibles credible because we really focus a lot on ingestible.
There's so many things about what you just said that I have questions about and that I want to dive into. And I love that your dog is agreeing with everything that you're saying. Like she knows what she's talking about. So one of the things that you said that struck me is you mentioned that CPG typically, just sticking with CPG for a second, typically have good manufacturing best practices and guides and documents that outline all their processes. Is that something that you're seeing in the cannabis industry?
So we're starting to. We're starting to actually see facilities getting good manufacturing certifications, GMP certifications. We're starting to see them follow, some are trying to get organic certification. Obviously, you cannot get that in the cannabis, but you already see it in hemp and some of the movements there. You're seeing, like in California, the symbol for sun and earth, which is for sun-grown outdoor cannabis. So these are ahead of appellations that we hope to see at some time in the future. And that's, again, about good cultivation practices. And but to the point that you asked about, you do not get to, sell anything into a major grocery store without being able to prove that you have good manufacturing practices. And if you make any claims on that package, such as it's a non-GMO product, then you need to make sure that has been certified a non-GMO product or a kosher product or an organic product. And it leads into the claims, right? So we are still unregulated in a national level. We don't fall under any FDA guidelines. And cannabis has very much been all over the place in these things, right? So there's no significant way. We pause for just a second because I don't know why she's crazy, but
Absolutely. I know very much.
Let me step back for
Yep.
1 second.
So, if you're just tuning in, I'm your host, Kendra Losey, and I'm here with Merril Gilbert, the co founder and CEO of TraceTrust. And we are talking about the importance of how you can build trust into your cannabis products. So, if you're watching and you have any questions or comments, please be sure and drop them below. We want to make sure that we're getting your questions answered and that everything is you're able to scale and grow and really just dive into growing your product. So Merril was just commenting on the importance of good manufacturing best practices, particularly as we're currently state by state and unregulated. And now she is back.
Okay,
Welcome back. Welcome back. Yeah, jump back in.
Before we started this today, I was thinking, God, I hope we get through it without one interruption. But clearly, that's not how this works anymore. So,
if we're all there. If it makes you feel any better, I had a 5-minute interview yesterday, and that is the 5 minutes during my day that Amazon rang the buzzer down below, and my dog was barking, and the neighbors were in the hallway. That 5 minutes, I get it, totally get it.
So I was talking about the claims that you make on your label, and back to you can't sell anything into the grocery store. But the other side of that is that these things mean something. They mean something if I'm a supplier and a vendor putting my, the distributor, right? So I have to have some kind of chain of command of these products. I have to be able to trace them if there's a recall for any reason. And it's on every single thing in your house, in your office. There is a UL code on your television set. There is a code on this MacBook that I'm sitting at. I mean, we don't do this. So, as an industry, the most exciting part is as we get more states on board, as we see this opening up in international borders and countries, we need these guidelines. We need ways, which is the standard method of operations in every other industry, that really demonstrates safety, reliability, accuracy, and again, the ability to mitigate if for some reason there's something that goes wrong.
There's just so many reasons why that level of detail needs to be included on the labels. On our product labels, I think it's really interesting. I was talking about this the other day. I worked at a digital agency, and one of our clients was Bumblebee Tuna, and they launched a website where you could put in the code on the can of tuna, and it would interactively tell you. I mean, it was a cool cartoon display thing, but it would tell you where your fish was caught, how it was caught, where it was processed, where it was canned, where it was shipped. It was fascinating, the amount of detail, and these companies have it anyway. So it's making sure that you're giving it doesn't need to be that elaborate, but making sure that you're helping connect that to build trust with your customers is really important, especially with everyone paying attention, more and more attention with what we're all putting in our bodies.
And these are two really great points that you bring up. One is, we are right around the corner from having full blockchain processes in place, right? So you will be able to, you can do that now with some products, right? There are products that do have QR codes and it takes you back to the farm. But more importantly, as we start producing, as we get more pharmaceutical, nutraceutical companies coming in, as we get more medical research in those products and differentiators, there's going to be this need. And it's as confusing, again, as it's been in the states that have track and trace, how to implement that. So, the beauty of having a fully digitalized world is going to be fantastic. Part of that, though, can't always be done that way, right?
Right.
So there's a level of AI that can happen and such. But, you know, just to dig into just the minutia for just a second so people understand what a good manufacturing process, what GMP means. And so that validates everything in your facility. So we don't just look at your, what you're producing. It's a complete audit of all your documents. So again, all your ingredients, all your packaging, how has it come in, how is it stored, how is it utilized. It's a review of your production process. So how do you build products? How do you manufacturing them? How do you finish them? What are the quality assurances that are checking that all the way through before they get picked up and get distributed? And then going back to that last piece, can I recall it if I need to? Can I track it from those original raw ingredients and packaging to a finished product someplace out in the marketplace? And then, it's everything underneath that, right? So do you have safety protocols in place? Do you have training and onboarding? Do you change, again, we always laugh about the SOPs. Everybody needs SOPs, but like a standard operating procedure is not just a document downloaded from the internet. It is like, every time you change something, you need to update the document, and the document needs to actually match somebody's work. So we do a lot of those audits. And then the backside of that is the risk management, right? Mm-hmm. Insurance companies are just coming into this, or just starting to offer those products around product liability. But there is a real financial advantage to work through these things so that you can demonstrate that you can produce it time and time and time again. And that's the future. That's, bringing all of us that have previous other industry experiences into this legal market and really changing the nature in which we do business, but also how consumers have good experiences.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on the labels, but I want to touch on them in a couple of minutes. First, can we talk a little bit about the regulations that producers need to know and to be able to follow in order to certify those claims? So, for example, if something's organic or gluten-free or non-GMO, so many abbreviations, what does that look like, and how could products go through, or how can brands go through that process?
So all of this always starts in your, what am I trying to create? Who am I trying to reach? And what are the values that I want that product to stand for? Because we can make anything, but it's a question of, if you want to say this is a gluten-free, sugar-free, kosher product, well, that gummy can't be produced in a factory that is making, it can, but it has to be very segregated, that, is using eggs or using gelatin, or, carries sugars or nuts in it, right? These are all allergens that are contrary to what you're saying you want this product to do. So number one is like, what is it? What am I trying to make? And who am I trying to make it for? And then you go about manufacturing it and engineering it to make sure it. So co-packing, this is, that big relationship. If I can't produce it myself because I can control that environment, but if I have to rely on somebody else, I want to find that partner that can already match those claims, that already themselves probably holds those certifications, and is reliable enough and well-known enough, that has all the documentation in place, that when I go to place this information on my website, on my product, in my marketing materials, I can have something behind it that's actually true.
It's so important, as someone who's very allergic to many things, just from my perspective, like outside of the industry, just as a consumer. I was saying earlier today that I turned down trying some Delta 8 gummies not that long ago, because I didn't know what was in them. And I won't touch it if I don't know. And I look really closely at the labels. And I'm not alone in our consumers. Increasingly, consumers are smarter and paying more attention. And so we need to make sure that we're not just saying it, but there's actual
Mm-hmm.
proof. It's nice when someone says it's gluten-free, but when I get sick and can't breathe, that's not the same as them being certified that they're gluten-free.
Right. And so even if maybe the product is and that they
Right.
do have protocols, but it's in a facility that does other things and there's no claim on there, just like if you have a nut allergy, right, can be produced in a plant. Well, at least you're acknowledging that this, you're making a personal choice at that point that you want to risk. But it's not because I, the manufacturer, didn't say, hey, here's something you need to be aware of if this is an issue for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one of the other things that we were talking about is the importance of third-party audits and certifications. Where
Mm-hmm.
do in your mind, where do those fit in and how important are they? And why would companies, I'm throwing all the questions at you, and why would companies
I,
take that? We can break them
hire
up.
us.
So, number
Why don't you
one,
hire us?
why is it important?
So number one is I can tell you anything. How do you know that that's really true? Just because I said it? Well, who am I, right? So unless I have some way to verify that, it's my word against what I'm saying and what your needs are. So if, again, using the retailer, using risk management and liability all the way along in business practices, you need some way other than your verification and your self-attestment to something being done. And so these third-party audit practices, it's not like you just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be an auditor. It's just like an auditor for anything, your financials, your insurance claims, any of these things. It's the same thing. It's what I just said, depending on what is getting certified, there's certain processes and procedures that need to get through. And then once you do all of, let's say, the document reviews and the physical review, there's a correction period. Hey, we identified these areas. And before we give you that final certification that you can now tell everybody you have and show or put a true dose on your package, you've corrected those things. And so even in that, it becomes a really valuable educational tool for any business to go through, just because it really helps. And particularly, so many, yes, there are big businesses and big companies coming in and big money into this industry, but still the majority are very either legacy or very entrepreneurial new products coming in, new businesses, new cultivators. And they, don't have necessarily large teams of people
Mm-hmm.
with which to create this. And it's the same thing, one of our processes too is, we do help with formulation, but it's more the formulation of scaling from that little crafty thing you've made into a bigger batch commercial process. But we go back through this step of what we call alignment, and we really dig in with you on those questions of what are you trying to create? How are you going to do this? What are you trying to experience? And what do you want to communicate out? And really digging into that so that it lines up with the best ways to produce it, the best ways to talk about it. And if you're going to make a claim, you can back it up.
I think that's so important. So if I were a brand and say I was making edibles, right? How do you decide okay, so I know who my consumers are and I know they care what they're eating and what they're putting in their body, but how do you decide what levels of certifications make sense for your audience? And how do you even know which ones are available?
Again, it's coming back to if you do know that consumer and you do know who you're trying to reach. And only because it's International Women's Day and Week, I'm going to use women because, we are a new segment into the marketplace. We're fast growing segment, but we also have different need states in what we're wanting out of these products. So again, you have to first figure out who you're trying to reach and what you're trying to do. And then it's, when am I going to use it? Is this just something I use socially? Is this something I'm going to use every day? All of these things come into, at the end of the day, your financial plan, right? Because they're very different. If something I use every day, I'm going to buy more often as opposed to something that's a special occasion, one time,
Yeah.
right? I'm probably willing to pay more, or I'm going to gift that, right? That's a very different experience and something I want to try every day for my health and wellness, right? My stress, whatever I'm trying to do. So these, all these factors come into it. And then it comes into what is the ingredients, right? So again, if I'm going to, be sensitive around allergens, then I have to say which allergens do I need to call out. I don't necessarily have to have a non-GMO certification, right. But if I say it's going to be wheat-free and grain-free, again, I need to be able to prove somehow that that facility is doing that.
Yeah, it's so important. And to your point, knowing who your customer is and what their hot buttons are is going to make a difference in terms of knowing what they care about, knowing what options are available. From the
and interesting, I just one little anecdote here because so in the I still spend a lot of time in the natural products world, and in particular I spend a lot of time in food, right? So one of the most recent surveys, it was done in 2018-19, and then it was kind of looked at in 2020 as we move further through the year of COVID. And there was a concern that are we putting too many symbols on the outside of a package, right? Do people really care about any of that? Is it necessary?
Yes.
Because I probably could run into the kitchen and grab something and then have like 20 different marks on it, right? But it turns out that it's still really important. And people, more than ever, are willing to pay more for product transparency, integrity in ingredients, authenticity, and having some kind of a responsibility on the back end of that. And so, in our world of cannabis, it's really important not leaving the legacy behind, and certainly making sure that we get that social justice part and getting people out of jail that, are suffering while the rest of us are going out and trying to create profitable businesses. And so, values, who you stand for, or you just turn in and burn in and, then you can just pump as much THC into that thing and just keep the stoner culture going, right? But if you have a value system that you're trying to create, that's where these things become very important. The rest is just a minimal amount of regulatory responsibility you have to have just to, get something on the shelf at the best price.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially to your point about organizations like the Last Prisoner Project that are helping make a difference for the people that lives were impacted long before, I decided to get into this industry, and same with you. When we start to look at, so I guess my question is, and these things aren't cheap. Putting these things and these processes in place and putting these levels of certification in place aren't cheap. Why do you think companies should be making the decision to act on this?
Because if you want to be around for the long haul and you really want to be profitable, nothing costs more than having to either A, destroy a product because it didn't meet either a testing standard or it had a claim that got pulled off of a shelf. So either A, the product needs to be destroyed, or you have to relabel all of that. I mean, every time you do something like that, you lose money, you lose time, you lose resources, and more importantly, you're losing credibility. So again, these are time-proven methodologies for doing business. This is overhead, just in the same way that legal and accounting fees are overhead, and training and development, and ingredients, and insurance, and all of the things that, having an internet, paying your marketing people, all of this. This is doing business, right? So you can choose to skip it, you can choose to wait, but the longer you wait, and every time, the first time you have to relabel something, I mean, that 2018-19 in California, the only people that made money were the people that made labels.
I'm sure.
Right? Because those labels were just getting pulled and swapped all day long. Yep. You lose labor. You just lose everything. So why set yourself up to fail just because you don't want to spend, anywhere from $2,500 to $8,000 to have somebody really help you go through and make sure that you're making a good, safe, reliable product.
And I think the other piece of that are the consumers. Consumers care. They're willing to pay more for products that have that. You know, you mentioned the icons on the labels. I totally look for those. Like, it's a faster way for
Mm-hmm.
me to know something's safe. You know,
Yeah.
if I'm in a hurry or if I don't want to risk anything, I look for those icons. And it makes a big
And you want to
difference.
be able to see what this is made out of, right? Again, if you're that consumer, and we are seeing, most new and returning people, that are consuming cannabis are like, it's not just a brand and experience, but they want to know what's in it, especially because they don't know what to expect.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Right? If they're saying, oh, I've only smoked pot once, that's that's a whole old mindset, right? Just the whole statement is not even what you would say today.
It really is. It's totally true. um, yeah, it's so true. One of the things that I think is really important, and you touched on it earlier, and we were starting to talk about it with the QR codes and the codes that go on labels, so that way you can track back where things are the labels themselves. They're more than just there to look pretty and extend the brand packaging. What are some of the mistakes that you see people make on their labels? And I know we have some slides here too, so tell me when you want to share those.
Before I share, I'm just going to share that back in the day, which hopefully is not too far in the future again, is that when we would go to industry events, right, where we actually might have a table or, we'd be with a group of people. And Rhiannon and I used to buy a bunch of stuff, no matter what city or state. Sometimes we'd bring it, whatever, but we'd throw a bunch of things out on the table, right? And now these are mostly people in our business, right? So they kind of have an experience. They've had, they know what it is. But we'd ask them to pick up stuff and go, okay, can you tell me, what is this? Can you tell me what this is made out of? Can you tell me, is this a baked good? How easy do you think it's going to be for you to take this? And people were stunned because they just, even though they're experienced field, they didn't stop and think about that. So again, if you're looking your first time out, or maybe second or third trying to have a good experience, well, a baked cookie with with 10 milligrams of THC, and it's this big, that could be a really long time to feel anything. If it's 50 milligrams and you take that in your nut, you could be like on, one of those psychoactive or in the couch experiences, right? So that the first is, can I tell what is it and how many milligrams? But more importantly, because not enough in the consumer education tells you what onset offset, for those of us that know what that is, how quickly am I going to experience, how quickly will this experience end? That is very finite in the sense that we, are just now getting into these different technologies. We're just getting into different cannabinoids, and we don't have enough to say explicitly this will do this, right? So take 2 aspirin, you know what that's going to do. We're not there yet, but we do know certain things, right? So a beverage, a tincture under the tongue, a sublingual under the tongue, 15, 20 minutes, you should be feeling that, right? That cookie, though, that could be an hour. That could be 3 hours later. You've eaten way more than you should have because you didn't feel it, because it has to go through different parts of your body and not directly. So these are those kinds of nuances. You're not going to get everything like that out of a label, but the examples that we gave are kind of a good example and a awful example. And I think we should start with the awful one, because I think these are the things that we're facing, particularly unregulated markets, and where these things, can be avoided. And the other one really shows you an example of the things that you do want to think about, because they really well represent some of these call outs that we're talking about.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into the two examples that you were kind enough to bring with you. So we're going to pretend we're in an event. So I know we only have a few minutes left, but close your eyes, pretend you're at
Yeah.
an event with people again. Okay. All right, here we go. Merrill's showing you the two examples.
All right. So this is such a great representation right here. I love this, right? First of all, there's like sugar patch gummies for kids on the market that look just like that, right? Well, not with the marijuana in the background, but you could see where a child walking around the house could go, woo, right? Not something you want to happen. Second of all, if you were to be able to zoom in on your thing, it's saying here there's THC in it and extra strength THC, lovely. It's also saying it's in California, but this was actually purchased in Massachusetts.
Seriously?
So, and the only identifying way to get in touch with these people is this like Instagram on the side here, right? So there's nothing on here that's saying anything except that if you take it, you're going to get really high, and there's nothing legal about anything else on this package, right? Because you can't have things that look like a candy, and you can't make reference to it in the same way that's a like name of a candy or something that is known commonly, and it's not California, right? Because if it was California, it would have the California symbol on there. So everything on here is subspec and would not.
I just wanted to jump in. I just wanted to jump in here because their tagline is sour and sweet, then stoned.
And it's lovely. Doesn't even rhyme.
I know. There's nothing appealing about that. Okay, let's look at the next one. Is there anything else you want to cover on the bad one?
No, I think we got it, except the dead guy in the middle there. He's probably pretty good at showing what's going to happen to you. Not dead, because you won't die out of this, but you will not feel good. So this next one, I think, is a really good example of all the things you want to capture. So the picture on the left shows you the front. So number one, back to what we just said, that other product said it was in California, truly shows you that it's not a legal product in California because there's not that little triangular CA stamp right on the front. And that has to be at a certain size, which this is, in relevance to the package. And it has to be very clear. It also has to have weights and means. Doesn't care if it's cannabis or hemp or soda pop or chips. The weights and means, people are really particular about making sure that there is always a weight on there, fluid or dry, and you can be slightly under what you claim. You can be slightly over what you claim, but you can never be under, right? So if it says 6 fluid ounces, it cannot measure 5.9 ounces, right? It has to be 6. So that first of all is clear on here. The other thing is they clearly, obviously, their logo is really clear and consistent. So if I was to look for these products elsewhere, I'd be able to see it. But more importantly, I'm very much able to see that this is something I should use at night. It's telling me that it's a tincture, so I already know, that it's going to be in a liquid form. It gives me some of the ingredients that I'm going to have on here, and it tells me what a serving is. And so what also is great in this image is I might not see that, obviously, when I'm purchasing this, but what's great is when I pull out that liquid stopper in there, everything is marked. So I know how much 1 milligram is. So I can really figure out without having to think and do math in my head or get a piece of paper and count out things. I can actually see what I'm supposed to use that eyedropper for. And then the back, just again, here's the label for the distribution on the right side of this white label. So it's scannable. I know that it's been tracked all the way through when it was picked up. and I have more of the ingredient lists on here, and I have a way to contact the people that need this product.
It's so amazing. It's so amazing, the difference. I think the Kikoko one is beautiful. I'm like, oh, I should try that to sleep at night.
But at least, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, there was very clear. Okay, the other one was clear too. You were going to get pretty fucked up.
Right.
That
Yeah.
was really clear on the other one,
That was
right?
very
But
clear.
this actually was telling you what experience you might have,
Yeah.
why you might choose this product,
And what's
because
in it.
maybe I'm with person to sleep. Mm-hmm.
And there was no red number 6 there, or whatever color the red is. It's just so fascinating
Nope.
when you start to see different business practices and what people are doing to stand out and educate and care about the consumers, because those are also clearly two very different consumers that are going to be taking one versus the other,
Mm-hmm.
and for different purposes, right?
Right. But we're saying if you really want longevity, and you really want a presence, and you want a presence as legal access becomes time and time again. So, okay, right now, if I am Kyoko, I making this in California, I can control in California. But if I now jump to another state, I still have to figure out my source material. So again, I have to find a reliable, or set up my own facility again. Those are very costly items to do, but I have to find that reliable supply chain to match that same integrity that I have in that original product. And so these are the things that, the secondary things you think of as you go forward until you can carry your source materials state to state. And so that product profile becomes crucial as you continue to build your brand awareness.
It's just so much. There's so much that goes into it, but when brands get it right, it's so on point, and they become the ones that people are recommending to others, right? And that's where everyone wants to be. The brand that people recognize and are raving fans about. Like, if you don't have to do your own marketing because everyone's talking about you, that is the best position to be in.
Yes. Yes. And again, I truly love the women and the Kyoko brand. It wasn't that I chose them to promote it, but I really, it's such a good example of thinking things through, having a set of values, and making sure that, your consumer is going to understand what you're trying to create here and how to use it. That's what makes this a great business. That's what makes this a great experience. And that's what makes somebody want to buy that again and recommend it to their friends.
Absolutely. Yay. I love it. Merril, we are over time. I love having you on. I just,
Thank you.
There's just so much information here. And if you are wondering how to get a hold of Merril, do you want to go ahead and tell everybody how they can get a hold of you?
Yes. You can reach me at Merril, Merril, at TraceTrust.com directly, or info@TraceTrust.com. And if you're interested, I'm happy to spend 15 to 30 minutes with you on my time just to kind of answer your questions directly. So just don't hesitate to reach out. And if I don't have the answer, I'm very generous with sharing my resources.
And she really is. Thank you for being here, Merril. Thank you for watching. And if you have any comments, questions, drop them below, and we will be sure to get those answered for you. Until next time, I'm Kendra Losey with Modem Marketing. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.